Okay, I think we can start already. Hello, everyone. I'm very happy to be here with you today and to be able to speak about data-driven worlds, so how to gather and process valuable data. So first, let's start with an agenda. We're going to start with a quick introduction in a moment. Then we're going to ask ourselves a question, why do we need data, actually? Then we're going to talk some part about data structures. Then something for designers, so dashboards. And then we're going to go through case studies and end up with a question and answers part if you will need one. OK, so in terms of introduction, hi, as you could already read on the agenda, I'm Hubert Mielnik. I currently work at DBR77, which is a company, let's say, connected with game dev, because we're still working in Unity. However, we're doing like digital twins of factories. So basically, let's say Sims meets Factorio, but for a business. But beforehand, I worked for quite a while in game development. So I worked first in Magic VR on VR games. Afterwards, Black Eye Games, Gloria Victis, MMO. So today, most of the cases will be connected with the game development part, obviously, so that it's easier for you to then relate to it in your jobs. OK, so now, why do we need data? So, I mean, doesn't matter what type of game you're making. There are basically three pillars of where you would need your data. It's for enhancement, validation, and insight. And what I mean by enhancement is basically all the places where, thanks to looking at how your players play your game, you can improve the game, update, give patches that will be like improving the feeling that the players have while they're playing your game, obviously. Then validation. Validation gives you this opportunity where before you even implement something, you can, based on the data, say if something is needed in your specific case. We're going to talk about it in detail in one of the case studies later on. And then we have insight. So based on the data you have on your games, you can then see what worked in the games and what didn't. So when you're in the process of planning your next game, you can, based on the data you have from your previous games, obviously, to see what were the good things about the previous games that you want to implement in your new release, and which were the parts you want to avoid. OK, so also a quick disclaimer before we begin the next part of the presentation. The contents of the talk will be based on my experience and best practices that I found that were working for me for the projects I was working on. OK, so this might, or probably will, definitely vary for your projects. So if you feel like you do not like exactly think that something I'm telling is suiting you, then just we can also discuss it in the Q&A or later on together. I'm also willing to give you my insight and also receive some feedback from you guys. OK, so plan data structure or suffer consequences. That's one of the key pillars here. If you want to gather data and you need to gather data, start thinking about it before you launch. Like the part here about the things that are pointed out are the things that happened in one of the companies I worked for. So when we were starting our launch of the 1.0 version after early access, what we had in terms of data was Polish column names, data gathered in daily CSV dumps. We had same data in different files that had different names, which made it quite impossible to link the tables between each other. We had data without context. So basically, some data was just useless, redundant, and it was still there, using up space and also just making the picture more muddy. Then no data validation. After the launch, when the numbers of players increased, like times 10, times 20, whatever you say here, sometimes you might get issues of, let's say, if you're a programmer, you might understand that more even. Let's say the value is bigger than the integer max size. And you get a value that's outside of the range, so you're going to get a negative number then. And if you put it into your dashboard, it's going to look very bad. So, and probably you should just have validation that if such a value exists, then maybe just handle it in a different way. Also, there were issues with access to the data. Why? Because while programmers had access to the data as they were working on the databases, okay, some designers did not have the access. Because if you have a non-technical designer, right, you probably don't want him to mess up your SQL queries. So that's important, that like the part of the design is basically your design team, not your programmers, right? So they should have access to your data. Also, rework data is sometimes backwards incompatible. So when after the launch, you start to try to improve your data and how you gather that, it might not be quite as simple for you to just link this past data to the current one. So basically, it's like as if you would be starting from scratch, gathering your data. For us, it was almost 10 years of gathering data, and then we found out that like 80% of it was useless at this point. So that's the things that you would definitely want to consider beforehand. Okay, then I was talking about why we need data and why to plan before you actually start launching your game. But now, like for me, the 4 commandments, let's say, of data structure would be relational paradigm, consistent naming, important data, and uniformity. So going through this, in terms of relational paradigm, for me, personally, relational databases are the most easy to use and understand for human beings, basically. So if you want to have your data for your designers, I mean, I'm not talking about how you want to have your infrastructure on like the programming level, okay? I mean, if you need like NoSQL databases or whatever, it's fine. But if you have specific database for your designers, relational paradigm, for me, is something you should go for. Then consistent naming. So if you, let's say, refer to in-game currency as gold, then just go with it through all the tables. Gold earned, gold spent, total gold. Don't go with gold, money, total cash, because then it's going to be very hard to link it together. Then important data. So that's the very like important part here. And I cannot exactly tell you how to do it properly because it's going to vary from game to game. But you want to really think about which parts of your data that you gather are important and which are not. Because like in some cases, you might not need a specific data because it's already somehow shown in another table, let's say. So in order to have easier data, if you have, let's say, a counter of your events in the game, that how many players each player, let's say, completed certain events, right? You don't need to have any information about, let's say, the gold he earned during those events, because if it has like a fixed reward, then basically, if you know the amount of events, you'll know the amount of gold, and it already like shortens the amount of tables you have to manage, the amount of rows you have to understand. And then uniformity. What I mean by uniformity is it's especially important if you're using like a game that's, let's say, an MMO, like in my case, where you have different servers. And then for different servers, you're gonna have different timestamps, basically, for kills, item trades, and stuff like that. You want to have them all in the same specific date format. Because if you're gonna have those timestamps in the regional times, it's gonna become a mess real quick. Because for some regions change their times, like we do in the night from today to tomorrow, right? We change the hour on the clock. Some countries don't do that, so it's gonna be a mess, right? And you don't need to remember about every single date change that happens in the world at a specific point of time. So this will be the 4 pillars for me here. Okay, and now going to like the part for designers a bit, dashboards. So dashboards will help you in many ways. We're gonna discuss it in another slide. However, sometimes even before you start using dashboards, there's this like one very important, let's say, business even question. Which should I choose? You can, I mean, 4 are listed here, but there is plenty more. So Power BI, very popular, but also paid. Metabase, free, and so on and so on. And now, like, which should you choose? For me personally, if you start with data, I'd go with something free. For me, it was Metabase, which I can totally recommend because it offers you easy access to your data. It gives you all the basic things you would need in your dashboards. And then if you have something structured in a relational database, obviously it's very easy to port it later on to another dashboard. So just don't waste too much time on it. Try to just make it work first, and then if you need, improve to a better, more suiting solution. Because still, having something free and simple is better than have nothing at all. Okay, and now dashboards tool for modern designers. So as you can see here, these are like some basic looks of a dashboard that you could probably have for your designers. This one is like the very basic part we had as an introductory screen in Gloria Victis. So basically what you have here are three main things. You have here below, in the bottom, you have weapon kills. Then you have item values. And then you have like this table here is those items that are having a weird, they're taking like a weird turn in the amount of the items that were created during the past day. So from this table, you could basically see things like, let's say, dupe bugs, right? Because if there's like this one item that often goes in like 2 or 3 pieces a day, and then you have, let's say, 1,000 of them in one day, something is definitely wrong, right? So you want to then intervene and see what was happening with this item. Same with also like the prices of the items above. So like here you can see that if they're all stable, everything's like fine, then you basically already have like this basic insight at the start of your day that there's nothing very important that you should take care of. You can just go with your regular daily tasks. And you can have such dashboards for every single, let's say, pillar of your game. So there's one dashboard for, let's say, PvP, one for looting, the other for items, also some trade and stuff like that. So it's helping, especially that we as humans are very visual creatures. We don't like abstract numbers. We don't like tables. For us, it's easier to visualize something. Obviously, like if I would tell you that I'm having like this remote control in my hand, you basically know that it's a full remote control, right? If I'm gonna tell you I have a 100% of a remote control in my hand, it just sounds weird. It doesn't sound right. Like, why is it 100% of a remote control? It's just full item, right? You can see it before I even tell you that it's full. So dashboards have this good part here. Also, the other part in the bottom here is the ease of applying it. So, like I mentioned before, if you have like non-technical designers that are not too good with their SQL queries, let's say, the system like this easily helps them create those dashboards. They don't need to ask programmers for help, and also using like the ready-made building blocks, they will not like cause any issues in your databases as well. So this is like a safe method for both sides, actually. Okay, so before we move on, we're gonna move on to case studies. And the case studies will be mostly connected to Gloria Victis MMO. So some of you might know it, some of you don't. So I'm gonna just tell you in a few words what was the game. So basically, as the name suggests, it's an MMO with competitive PvP and PvE aspects. Also open world, so a lot of faction versus faction warfare, gathering, crafting, trades, all this type of stuff. We had 3 nations. They were like situated on like the vertices of a triangle. So basically every nation had contact with the 2 other nations, which will be important in the things we're gonna talk about, right? Okay, so moving on. The first case study is the gold influx after launch. So what did we happen to have in the game after 1.0 launch? So beforehand, we had stable and predictable economy. And then 1.0 launch happens, and after a few weeks, economy goes wild, inflation on the market, and players seem not to complete events for gold, which is basically weird, because if they need money and they're not completing the events that give them money, something's obviously weird, right? Okay, so we could probably guess what was the issue. And like, even when we were discussing it in the team, some people had like the right ideas of what that might be, right? But then just a simple look at the dashboard gives you like 3 events that give a lot of gold compared to the next positions, which are still very high. And then the list obviously goes into very low numbers really quickly. So it turns out there is just a few events that give you a lot of gold, which are worth your time. And the things you can see here, they even have it in the names, it's Raggy, Sirius, Brandon. What these were are the 3 world bosses we had. And the thing with the bosses was, each player gets some guaranteed reward, and what was even worse is majority of the value you get for the boss is in the guaranteed reward. So basically, what started happening is, when you had, let's say, times 10, times 20, times 30 of your players, completing such a world boss in a Zerg manner took just about a few minutes. So you just Zerg in with a whole group, kill one of the bosses, it takes you around 5 minutes, let's say, and you get already enough gold to sustain your daily play, okay? And it's guaranteed, so you don't even have to do anything. You just run with the party. It's also safe, 100 people. I mean, who's gonna compete with you? Very easy. And then, as I said, the nations obviously have like 2 links, so they're linked with 2 nations. So, and as you can see, there are 3 bosses. So on every such link is one of the bosses. If you have a big dominating nation, you can probably not even do 1 boss, but you can do 2 bosses. So you're actually, while just going with the Zerg, you can sustain 2 days of play in around 15 minutes. And also 0 risk, because with a huge party, you're not gonna get killed, you're not gonna get looted, you're not gonna lose your rewards. And then, if you have this data, you can also see the other parts of the world bosses actually first. So rewards not server locked, multiple servers at launch, and multiple restarts at launch. So what that means is, rewards not server locked. If you have in the MMO plenty of servers, right? Europe, Asia, America, and stuff like that. And after launch, you have all the servers times 3 times 4 for each region. You can just not only go and Zerg the bosses on your server, but you could actually go on the other servers and do the same thing. So basically what people did, knowing when is the daily restart, they would just log in after the restart, Zerg all the bosses on all the servers, and then just log off. And they already have enough money to do whatever they need. Also, yeah, multiple servers at launch, and then multiple restarts at launch. So we had to apply, obviously, some patches, and some of them required server restart. So if players knew about it, because they got like an announcement in the game that the server is gonna restart in, let's say, 10 minutes, great. You ping your Discord, your friends log in, and you do the process again and again, rinse and repeat. After a few weeks, after the launch, players had a lot of gold accumulated. They didn't want to do any other event than those 3 bosses, because this was just clearly not worth it. And here we come with the solutions, because if you end up with such an issue, especially in a multiplayer game, this is why data is, by the way, very important here, is you have basically minutes, days to find a solution. Because if not, your economy is just gonna go down the drain, and you're not gonna be able to like help it out in any possible way, right? With a single player game, it's a bit easier. You have some time. You can just take your time before you apply a patch. For us, it had to be almost instant. So we came up with 2 main short-term fixes for this issue. One of them was to reduce the number of restarts per day, which was actually easy because we already knew that we were after launch. The restarts were not happening so often because we just already applied all the patches that were needed, right? So this was like a very easy thing. Then the other one, very easy as well, is make the rewards server locked. So basically, if you choose your server, which you play on, then you can still Zerg the bosses and get the rewards for your server, but you will not get the rewards for other servers. Obviously, not the best idea. I mean, like, it's not fixing the issue, but it definitely helps. And then we also had this one long-term idea of actually reworking all the events that we have from the guaranteed rewards and put all the things that were in the guaranteed rewards into drops of the mobs and the bosses that you actually killed. And then you have the loot randomizer, right? I mean, party loot. So basically, somebody takes the loot if he's lucky, and somebody doesn't. So basically, then you can just have the small guaranteed fee that makes it like worth to show up for the event, but majority of the gold that lets you sustain your daily gameplay is in those randomized drops of mobs, right? So if you're lucky, you're gonna end up the boss with enough gold to stop earning gold for the day. But if not, then you basically are forced to go for other events, and the economy starts rolling again. So this is why it's very important to have this data, because also, as you can see here, with this data, we do not only know which events are the issue, but we also know the scope of the issue. So we know how much of the money has to be taken away or redistributed in order for the other events to become worthwhile. Okay, then another case study. This is from another, let's say, a topic. It's gold sellers. If you've ever played an MMO or you've been creating one, you know that gold sellers are a huge, huge trouble. So introduction to the issue. What do we have here to find the gold sellers? Basically, many ways of laundering, let's say, the illegal gold gained, because you can put the gold to other characters through trade, auction houses, perhaps even looting. If you buy a very expensive item and then go somewhere you can get looted by your friend who then gets the item from you, you basically can transfer this item this way. And also player stalls. So you can just set up your own stall somewhere in the, in the world and make players buy something from you or sell in a very cheap or expensive price, whatever you're trying to do. Then also the other issue we had was useless gathered data, which we're gonna show in a moment and discuss why it was useless. And also the point that was actually pretty interesting for me when I was trying to investigate the issue is that like the top real money transfer sellers, they operate basically a bit like mafia. So it's not like you have this one guy who does this all, bugging and then getting the gold, and he accumulates the gold and he just stays with the gold in his character and then he just sells it. It's not working this way. There's plenty of people gathering the gold and then putting it into different players' inventories where they stack up the gold. And then the person who contacts you after you buy gold is a different character. So what you see in like this, even if you try to like find the guy and just like, spot who's selling the gold, you're gonna basically ban the guys who just have enough money to trade with you. But you're not gonna end the process itself because there is a lot of other layers of the problem belowhand. And it's just gonna happen again and again and again in moments, basically. It just takes, like, let's say, a day to start distributing again. A bit like, let's say, some other illegal substances in the real world. Okay, so I'm not sure, it's not gonna be visible. So, like, why didn't it work? First of all, we had, as I said before, daily CSV dumps. So every day was a specific data table in Excel. So getting to understand how the process went on for months, very hard. Open a lot of Excels, try to compare the data, quite impossible. Then also what we had, which is not maybe too visible here, is the row here, which actually goes into other rows, is when players were trading, all the items and the amount of items in the trade were all put in one string, and the string was saved in the database. So if there was like a trade of 20 items, you have like this very long lines of text, basically, which are very hard to then parse into valuable data, because how can I know, oh, it's also in Polish, so how can I know how much does wykwintna dziczyzna actually now currently sell for, right? It's pretty much impossible. Same goes on with, obviously, the deleted parts, so the character names, character account IDs and stuff. So we did have character IDs, but we did not have account IDs. So if there was like one player who was selling things or like transferring things from his own character to another character of himself, we would have to basically, do the process double, because then we have to first identify that there was like a very weird trade happening, and then double check if it wasn't a trade of the same person with himself, right? So that's weird. So what did work is we completely remapped how we're gathering data of the trades. So first of all, we added transaction ID. So every item and every gold piece that was transferred he was linked to a certain transaction, but was a separate line. Therefore, you can actually just select all the lines of a specific trade and then see who brought what into the trade, right? Also, we added the account IDs, character IDs, and character names. So it's very easy then, even for the designer to like look at it and see that some names, let's say, show up very often. And then I mean, in very many cases, it's easier. It's easier for the eye. It's easier for SQL queries as well. Okay, and what this enabled us to do is basically to find out the players who were selling the gold, obviously. We're also able to find the players who they traded with in terms both of like their clients, so who buys gold, but also who transfers the gold to them. And therefore, find the real root cause of the issue. So the players who are actually earning this, let's say, illegal gold, right? So we could obviously ban the players who are getting this gold. But this does not also like finish the issue, because the player behind it, the brain behind it, he's still operational. He's gonna create a new account, even buy the game for on a sale for a couple of zlotys, and he's gonna go back to doing whatever he was doing before. So the next step here is fixing the loopholes. And this is like actually one of the funniest loopholes we had, because in some point of time, we added something that was called a crafting board. So basically on the crafting board, there were like automatically generated requests that were like created by the system, not the players, right? So they were like always there, always available, where it would say players like, craft this specific item in like, let's say 10 pieces, and then come to the board and sell it for a specific amount of money. The thing is, we obviously had a cooldown for this operation, not to be abused by the players. However, players found a bug that enabled them not to get the cooldown, so they could actually do it continuously. And here you can see actually something that we call like a counter for every player of the events he did daily. And you can see that there's like this objective type, so a quest of this specific ID that was completed by a specific player almost 6,000 times during one day. And you can see that it's 6,000, 6,000, then it's 1.2, and then we go to numbers around 100, right? So you can see that something's definitely off, especially if other players aren't doing that, right? So this is like the easiest part here. You identify the loophole. Now, obviously, you can both ban the player who's doing the scammy part, but you can also fix the issue. So even if he comes back to the game or he transfers the knowledge to somebody else, it's not gonna be possible anymore, right? So this gives you like the approach where you can not only find the people who are guilty of this of the gold selling, but also fix the ways they can earn the money in, which is obviously the best solution because it's then foolproof. Okay, so now case study in combat tweaks. Here will be two case studies inside one of this. So the first one is weapon balance. For MMOs, especially open-worlded, there is like this importance that we had, let's say, two alternative systems: the open world and the arena duels. And you can even see here, like the used weapons and like the percentage of the weapons for open world and arena are obviously different. If you're in a small, confined space, you're perhaps not going to use a bow, let's say. So it's completely useless. But then, in the open world, bow might be a very good tool. So if you want to balance out a weapon because something is too strong, you can now see where it's used too often or where it's too strong, right? I mean, with this data, you can then tweak these parameters that are gonna reduce the strength of this weapon for this particular use case. So basically, let's say some of the weapons, two-handed in our game, had this ability to cleave. So when you release a hit, you can cleave through 3 enemies and deal the same damage to 3 enemies, right? For the arena, it doesn't matter. Open world with many players, obviously it does matter, right? So if you want to then tweak those parameters, you know where you're targeting the changes of the weapons. Then the other thing, specifically about the open world, is when we are gathering kill statistics, we're gathering also the position where the kill happened and the timestamp of the kill. Therefore, you can not only put them on the spots on the map where the kills happened, but you can also tell if there was like a big battle in this place. Because if there's like a lot of kills in a very short amount of time, then obviously this was a big battle. Based on this, you can also then check what type of weapon was used, and therefore identify not only if the weapon is more used, let's say, in the arena or in the open world, but also is it more useful in the large-scale battles or in the small scale, right? Because there might be some weapons that are still better off in the open world than on the arena, but for some reasons they're not too good in like very big combats. Let's say in our game daggers. Daggers are were extremely effective against single players or like 2 players, especially if you can just hit somebody in the back for the backstab damage. So it's then easier to backstab somebody in the open world than on the arena. But then again, because of how short they are, it's very hard to use them in big battles because you cannot come close to the enemy and just hit him with the dagger. So this here helped a lot with identifying the issues and balance issues of the weapons and then tweaking it in the places where we wanted to tweak the weapons. Okay, another case here will be ping compensation, so another combat thing we did after the launch. And here I would like to go a pretty different manner than what we did before, because here we're going to discuss also this topic of validation, which I mentioned before. So you don't have the system implemented, but you feel like there is a need for the system, right? So before you do that, you can first start with gathering data. You can gather the data about the ping on all servers, what we did for a week, and therefore see if there is like even the issue really happening there. Like, is the ping so different and so high for some players that the ping compensation is needed? Also, here is like there's a small star in like 1 week, because this is also a thing I believe we could have done better if we would be starting with planning what data we want to gather from the start, because we could actually always monitor the pings of the players, not only for the 1 week, but like, from the start of the game. Because with just looking for the pings for one week, there might be players, off on a vacation in certain regions. There might be players who are just not playing at this point of time in the game, but they will come back and they will not be like included in the stats. So if we would have those stats like historically, we could like see all the players who are playing for the last week, month, year, quarter, and just do this decision on a bit more informed basis. But yeah, that's like just an additional point. Then the analysis here. So also it's very important to see not only just the average ping, but also the median of the ping. Because some players might have like a very, very high ping, and therefore the average will be higher. But the median of the ping will be somewhere in the middle, obviously, and might be pretty stable. So this also might change whether you want to implement such a feature or not. And also, retention of the players, because if you're gathering data for a week, right, there might be some players who just logged into the game, played for, let's say, 30 minutes, they decided that the game isn't for them, and they just, stopped playing it. Do we want to really like use this kind of data? Probably not. However, then on the other hand, if you have a player who's playing for a few days and he drops off, you might also want to see maybe he did drop off because of the ping. Like if you can see that he has a very high ping and there's like a bigger drop off in the players with higher ping, then maybe that's the issue. Maybe they're not competitive enough in combat. And if there would be a ping compensation feature, they would be just staying with the game for longer, right? So that's like important things that you might want to analyze here. Then obviously implementation. So you do the coding, then you do the testing like in the in-house. And then this is the funniest part in MMO games. So basically you launch the update and there's outrage on the Discord happening. People cry about every single part of the feature. They hate it. They say that it's terrible, it's stopping the fun. It's just, you know, the most ridiculous idea you have ever thought about. And here you might just think about this, that maybe you did a mistake, which we're gonna continue in the next slide. But here comes in monitoring of the statistics, right? So here with this line is marked the part where we implemented ping compensation. People said that it's unplayable right now. That's what most players say if they just don't like a change. It's unplayable, you cannot play the game. It's obviously gonna kill the game and the PvP aspect. So as you can see, when we implemented it, there is this drop because players just stopped playing because they said it's impossible to play the game, right? But then they decided that they actually like the game, so they came back, and from the rest of the graph, you can see that basically, it goes up and down, but it basically stays at the same level. So the ping compensation did not actually affect the game in such a way that it was unplayable. What changed actually when we would analyze more data was who killed who, basically. So that's what caused the outrage. So players who were just victims for most part because they had high ping, now they started also killing the people who were used to killing them easily, causing outrage basically. Okay, so this was one of the last slides in terms of case studies. What we have here now is the main takeaways. So data structure is key. Then also dashboards for designers, a very useful tool. Can't stress this enough. It really helps. It improves and speeds up the data-informed design processes. Then also take care of data before needed. So first think about the data and what you want to gather, and not gather data when the problem occurs, because it's just too late. Especially in multiplayer games, it's way too late to do it then. And then the most important part here also, which I wasn't mentioning before, is correlation is not causation, which you can definitely see on the picture here. So it's a very also important part for the a trap in design when you're using data, that sometimes data may correlate with each other, but actually one does not cause the other, right? I mean, that's basically there's this correlation versus causation where many times, and it correlates, that people who sleep in shoes, right, they have a headache next day. But it's not due to the shoes. It's due to the fact that most people who sleep in shoes were just drunk and they didn't have the time to take off their shoes, right? So the headache is definitely not from the shoes, it's from the alcohol, right? So here's one of the parts that's important to also understand. Also, there's a side note, sometimes what's logical and what comes out of the data, which is fair, might not be the most fun. So sometimes you might actually want to, that's why you still need a designer and not a database with AI model, because sometimes you just want to see that, yeah, okay, this will be fair, but I don't want it to be fair, because it shouldn't be fair. For me, it's more fun when it's not fair. And this is also a valid point then, that you see what's fair and you can tweak it so it's not fair.